talk about weight loss, most people think it's as simple as calories in and calories out. Eat less, move more, and the weight should just fall off, right? But if you've ever tried dieting, you already know it doesn't work that way. You lose some weight maybe in the beginning, but then the scale stalls, you feel hungrier, your energy drops, and eventually the weight creeps right back on. Why? The answer lies in something called the body set weight your body's built in fat thermostat. Think of it this way, your home has a thermostat that regulates temperature. If you set it to 72 degrees F and the room gets too warm, the air conditioning kicks in to bring it down. If the room cools off too much, the heat turns on to bring it back up. The thermostat keeps everything stable. Your body does the exact same thing, but instead of room temperature, it regulates your body fat. This is called homeostasis, your body's natural tendency to maintain balance. When you try to lose weight, your body senses that drop and fights back, your metabolism slows, hunger hormones increase, and cravings intensify. On the flip side, if you overeat for a while, your body ramps up energy burning to push your weight back down. This is why losing weight and keeping it off feels like an uphill battle. The problem isn't just willpower, it's biology. Your body is actively defending a certain level of fat, just like a thermostat defending temperature. But here's the real question: if the body set weight is real, what actually controls it? And more importantly, can we change it? When we think about weight, it's easy to believe that the body is just a passive storage unit for calories. Eat more, store more. Eat less, burn more. That's the calories in, calories out model we've been taught for decades.
That were
but
used during the
biology doesn't work in straight lines like that. The body is not a bank account, it's a thermostat. And that thermostat is what we call the body set weight. The idea is simple. Your body has an internal setting for how much fat it wants to carry. That fat level isn't random, it's regulated. Think about animals in the wild. A lion doesn't step on a scale or track calories, but it doesn't become obese. A gazelle doesn't count macros, but it doesn't waste away either. Why? Because their bodies are programmed to maintain a certain fat range for survival. Too little fat and you don't survive the next famine. Too much fat and you can't run, climb, or escape predators. Evolution has wired living creatures to keep their body fat tightly controlled. Because survival depends on it, humans are no different. If we didn't have a system to regulate fat stores, our ancestors would have either starved in times of scarcity or been too sluggish to survive when food was plentiful. This is why, even today, the body resists sudden changes in weight. When weight drops, the body compensates. When weight goes up, it compensates as well. There are countless examples in science that prove this point. Back in the 1950s, researchers offered healthy young men thousands of extra calories a day in what's known as the Vermont Prison Overfeeding Study. Initially, they gained weight quickly, but after a while, their bodies adapted. Their metabolism sped up, body temperature increased, and they started unconsciously moving more, fidgeting, walking, burning off the excess. Once the study ended and they returned to normal eating, their weight quickly dropped back to baseline, almost as if their bodies were defending that original set weight. The opposite has also been studied. When people are forced to lose weight through calorie restriction, their bodies react strongly. In the famous Minnesota starvation experiment during World War II, healthy young men were put on a semi-starvation diet. They lost weight, but along the way, their metabolism slowed dramatically, their body temperature dropped, their energy and focus plummeted, and they became obsessed with food. When the experiment ended, not only did they regain all the weight they had lost, but in many cases, they overshot and ended up heavier than before. Again, the body was fighting to restore its set weight. Even in modern times, we see this happen. Someone goes on a crash diet, drops 20 pounds, and feels good at first, but then the body pushes back. Hunger hormones increase, metabolism decreases, and within months, the weight comes back. Studies following contestants from weight loss shows like The Biggest Loser have shown the same pattern years after losing large amounts of weight. their metabolism is still significantly slower than expected. The body is still trying to push them back toward that original set weight. This is the problem with the calorie model. It assumes the body is like a math equation. Subtract 500 calories a day, lose a pound a week. But the body is not a simple equation. It's a dynamic system that adapts to inputs. When you cut calories, the body cuts output. When you force in more calories, the body increases output. It's not about the calories, it's about the regulation. And here's the key point. What actually regulates the set weight? If your thermostat at home is stuck at 80 degree VF, it's not enough to open the windows or wave a fan around. You have to fix the thermostat. The same is true for body fat. If your body insists on defending a higher weight, it's because the fat thermostat has been reset. And the question we must ask is this: what's controlling the dial? What tells the body how much fat to store and where that set point should be? The answer doesn't lie in calories at all, it lies in hormones. For decades, we've been told that weight loss is simple math: eat fewer calories and you'll lose weight. The logic sounds convincing. If you eat less than you burn, the body must dip into fat stores to make up the difference. But if that model were truly correct, then dieting should work consistently. Yet we know it doesn't. Millions of people have tried cutting calories, and what happens? At first you lose a little weight, then the body slows down. Hunger goes up, energy drops, and before long the lost weight creeps right back on. Clearly, something deeper is happening. The problem is that the calorie model treats the body like a calculator when in reality the body is more like a thermostat. Think back to the thermostat analogy. Imagine your thermostat is set at 72 degrees VF. If you open the window on a cold day, the room cools down, but the furnace immediately kicks on to bring the temperature back up. If you turn on a small heater, the thermostat senses the rise and turns on the air conditioning to bring it back down. Either way, the temperature doesn't change much. The body does the same thing with weight. When you cut calories, it responds by cutting energy expenditure. When you overeat, it raises energy expenditure. In other words, the body adapts to fight against long-term changes in weight. This isn't speculation. It's been proven in study after study. One classic example is the Minnesota starvation experiment, where young men were put on a semi-starvation diet during World War II. They ate about half their normal calories, and yes, they lost weight. But the body fought back. Their basal metabolic rate dropped by about 40%. They became cold, sluggish, and constantly hungry. They couldn't concentrate. Their bodies were conserving every possible calorie. And when the experiment ended, they didn't just regain the lost weight. They often overshot, ending up heavier than before. The calorie deficit triggered powerful survival mechanisms. On the other side, overfeeding studies show the opposite. When healthy young men were deliberately over thousands of extra calories each day, they gained weight at first. But soon their bodies compensated. Their metabolism sped up. They started moving more, even subconsciously, fidgeting, walking, producing extra heat. When the study ended and they went back to normal eating, their weight quickly returned to baseline, almost as if their bodies were defending a set point. The same thing happens in real life. If you've ever gone on a diet, you might have noticed that at first the pounds come off quickly. But then progress slows. You're still eating less, but your body isn't burning as much as before. This is called metabolic adaptation. The body has turned down its furnace to conserve energy, just like a thermostat sensing the change. This is why eat less, move more fails in the long run. Yes, cutting calories works for a few weeks or months, but then the adaptations set in. Hunger hormones increase, metabolism decreases, and the body resists further weight loss. It's not because you're weak or lazy or lacking willpower. It's because your biology is fighting back. So if the calorie model is broken, the question becomes, what is actually controlling this thermostat? If it's not the sheer number of calories coming in or going out, then what is telling the body how much fat to store and how much energy to burn? What's regulating that set point that the body so fiercely defends? The answer isn't found in calories at all. It's found in hormones. Hormones are the body's messengers, telling your cells when to store energy, when to release it, when to feel hungry, and when to feel full. And among all the hormones, one stands out as the master regulator of body fat. That hormone is insulin. If calories are not the main driver of body weight, then what is? To answer that, we have to look at the body's real control system, hormones. And among all the hormones that influence weight, one stands above the rest, insulin. Insulin is not just a blood sugar hormone. It's the body's primary fat storage hormone, and it acts like the thermostat dial that sets your body weight. The easiest way to see this is in clinical medicine. Consider type 1 diabetes, a condition where the body cannot produce insulin. Before insulin was discovered in 1921, type 1 diabetes was essentially a death sentence. No matter how much food the patient ate, they kept losing weight. Their body simply couldn't store energy. Fat and muscle wasted away, and even enormous amounts of food could not reverse it. Why? Because without insulin, the body has no way to store nutrients. This is the ultimate proof that calories alone don't determine body weight. People with type 1 diabetes had calories coming in, but without insulin, the body could not hold on to them. Now look at what happened when insulin therapy was introduced. For the first time, patients with type 1 diabetes could survive, but almost immediately another pattern emerged. Once insulin was given, patients began to gain weight, sometimes rapidly. The same individuals who were wasting away despite eating plenty suddenly began storing fat once insulin was restored. The only difference between wasting away and gaining weight was the presence of insulin. This pattern has been confirmed in countless studies. One of the most famous was the Diabetes Control and Complications Trial, DCCT, which studied type 1 diabetic patients in the 1980s and 1990s. The trial compared standard insulin therapy with intensive insulin therapy. The results showed that those on intensive therapy, meaning they received higher doses of insulin to keep blood sugar tightly controlled, consistently gained more weight. The difference wasn't in calories, diet, or exercise. It was in the amount of insulin circulating in the body. More insulin meant more fat storage. Less insulin meant less fat storage. The same principle holds true outside of diabetes. Patients with type 2 diabetes, who often require increasing doses of insulin over time, also tend to gain weight as their insulin rises. And when medications are used to lower insulin levels instead of raising them, weight often comes down. The biology is crystal clear. Insulin is the master regulator of fat storage. So let's return to the thermostat analogy. Think of insulin as the dial on your body's fat thermostat. Turn the dial up and the body defends a higher set weight. Fat is stored more easily. Metabolism adapts to maintain that higher level, and losing weight feels almost impossible. Turn the dial down and the body defends a lower set weight. Fat is released, metabolism becomes more favorable, and weight loss becomes natural rather than forced. It's not about starving yourself or out-exercising the calories. It's about changing the dial. This explains why traditional calorie restriction is such an uphill battle. You can cut calories, but if insulin remains high, the body's thermostat dial is still set to store fat. You're essentially trying to heat a room when the thermostat is set to blast cold air. No matter how hard you try, the system works against you. But if you adjust the dial, lower insulin, the whole system shifts. Now, weight loss isn't a constant struggle. It happens in alignment with your biology. The key then is not to obsess over calories, but to focus on insulin. If you can lower insulin, you can reset the thermostat. And once the thermostat changes, the body begins to naturally defend a lower weight. The question becomes, how do we turn down insulin? What strategies actually lower it in a sustainable way? That's where we turn next. Once you understand that insulin is the body's thermostat dial, the next question is obvious: what determines insulin levels in the first place? The answer, more than anything else, is food. But it's not just how much food you eat, it's what kind of food you eat. Different foods trigger insulin in very different ways, and this is why calorie counting alone doesn't work. Take carbohydrates, for example. Not all carbs are equal when it comes to insulin. Refined carbohydrates, white bread, pasta, pastries, sugary drinks are rapidly digested and absorbed. Blood sugar rises quickly and insulin surges to bring it back down. Whole unprocessed foods like beans, lentils, or vegetables, on the other hand, are digested slowly. Fiber slows the release of glucose and insulin rises far less dramatically. Both may contain the same number of calories, but the insulin response is entirely different. And since insulin is what sets the body's fat thermostat, it's the insulin response that matters most. This is why focusing only on calories can be misleading. Imagine eating 100 calories of cookies versus 100 calories of broccoli. On paper, they look the same, 100 calories in, 100 calories out. But your body doesn't see them the same way. The cookies trigger a sharp insulin spike, telling your body to store energy as fat. The broccoli triggers almost no spike at all, allowing the body to use energy more flexibly. Same calories, very different hormonal effect. Researchers have gone beyond calorie counts to measure what's called the insulin index of foods. Just like the glycemic index measures how quickly blood sugar rises, the insulin index measures how much insulin a food provokes. And here's the interesting part: the insulin index often doesn't match the calorie content. Some high-calorie foods barely move insulin, while some lower-calorie foods can trigger large spikes. For example, protein-rich foods like fish or eggs can stimulate insulin far less than refined carbs, even if the calorie count is similar. This proves once again that it's not just about energy in and out, it's about how your hormones respond. Another key factor is food processing. Natural foods, meat, vegetables, nuts, seeds, tend to be digested more slowly, producing a more gradual insulin response. Processed foods are stripped of fiber, ground into fine powders, and often combined with sugar or starch. This makes them absorb rapidly, spiking insulin much higher. That's why eating the same food in different forms can have very different effects. An apple has fiber, water, and natural structure, leading to a slow insulin rise. Apple juice, stripped of fiber, hits the bloodstream almost like pure sugar. Same fruit, but a totally different insulin impact. Fiber itself deserves special attention. It's one of the most powerful tools for controlling insulin naturally. When you eat fiber-rich foods, vegetables, legumes, whole grains, the fiber slows digestion and blunts the insulin spike. That's one reason traditional diets high in fiber, like those based on beans or root vegetables, tend to support healthier weights without deliberate calorie restriction. Fiber doesn't just pass through the digestive system, it changes the hormonal environment, making it easier for the body to regulate fat storage. So how do we put this into practice? It doesn't mean you need to count every gram or follow a rigid prescription. It simply means focusing on food quality over food quantity. Processed foods like greens, fibrous vegetables, nuts, seeds, fish, eggs, meat, and legumes. Limit refined and processed carbohydrates that spike insulin quickly. Many people find that low carb or whole food based diets naturally lower insulin without needing to count calories. The weight comes off not because you're forcing it, because you've reset the thermostat by changing the signal to insulin. And this is the key takeaway. Every time you eat, you're either turning the thermostat up or down. Refined, processed foods crank insulin up, pushing your body to store more fat. Whole, natural foods keep insulin low, allowing your body to release fat more freely. It's not about how much energy a food contains, it's about how that food communicates with your hormones. What you eat determines where your set weight is dialed in. And by changing what you eat, you change the thermostat itself. So far, we've talked about what you eat and how it affects insulin. But there's another equally important factor that often gets overlooked when you eat. Most of us think about diet only in terms of food choices, carbs, fats, protein, calories, but the timing and frequency of eating have just as much influence on insulin levels. Every time you eat, no matter how small the snack, insulin rises. And if you're eating constantly throughout the day, insulin stays chronically elevated, which keeps the body locked in fat storage. Think about the way modern eating patterns have shifted. Decades ago, people typically ate 3 meals a day: breakfast, lunch, and dinner, with little or no snacking in between. Today, many people graze from the moment they wake up until the moment they go to bed. A quick breakfast, a mid-morning snack, lunch, an afternoon snack, coffee with sugar, dinner, dessert, maybe even a late night bite, that can easily add up to 8, 9, or 10 eating occasions in a single day. And with each one, insulin rises. The body never gets a break to allow insulin to fall. This is why meal frequency matters. When you eat 6 to 10 times per day, insulin levels remain chronically elevated. Even if the meals are small or calorie controlled, the constant stimulation of insulin prevents fat from being released. It's like trying to lower the thermostat in your house while the heating system is running nonstop. On the other hand, when you eat fewer, more structured meals, say 2 or 3 per day, insulin has time to return to baseline between meals. That break is critical because fat burning only happens when insulin is low. We see this play out in both research and real life. Studies on intermittent fasting and time-restricted eating consistently show improvements in insulin sensitivity. When people extend the fasting window between dinner and the next day's first meal, insulin levels drop, blood sugar control improves, and fat oxidation increases. In one study, men with prediabetes who restricted their eating to just a 6-hour window each day saw dramatic improvements in insulin sensitivity and blood pressure, even though they didn't lose significant weight. The key change wasn't the number of calories, it was the reduction in insulin exposure over the day. Real-life observations confirm this as well. Cultures that traditionally practiced longer overnight fasts or ate fewer meals often had lower rates of obesity and metabolic disease, even when calorie intake was not meticulously controlled. The simple act of spacing out meals naturally lowers insulin and allows the body to tap into stored energy. The body is designed to alternate between feeding and fasting states. In the feeding state, insulin rises to store energy. In the fasting state, insulin falls and the body uses that stored energy for fuel. Both states are essential, but in our modern pattern of constant eating, the fasting state has almost disappeared. We're stuck in perpetual feeding, which means perpetual insulin. Without the low insulin periods, the thermostat never has a chance to reset. By reintroducing structured eating, whether that's 3 meals a day without snacks or even practicing intermittent fasting with 1 or 2 meals, you create the conditions for insulin to drop. Over time, these lower insulin levels gradually shift the body's set weight downward. The weight loss that follows isn't forced, it's a natural consequence of restoring the hormonal rhythm the body is built for. This is why focusing on both what you eat and when you eat creates the best results. Whole, unprocessed foods prevent excessive insulin spikes, while proper meal timing ensures insulin has time to fall between meals. Together, they reset the thermostat more effectively than either approach alone. The question then becomes, what does this look like in real life, and how do we put it into practice in a way that's sustainable for the long term? We've covered the science of the body set weight, why calories don't tell the whole story, and how insulin acts as the thermostat dial that controls fat storage. Now it's time to put all of this together into a simple, practical strategy that anyone can use. The truth is, lasting weight loss doesn't come from endless calorie restriction or hours on the treadmill. It comes from working with your body's biology instead of against it. The first principle is to focus on foods that lower insulin rather than just counting calories. This means choosing foods that don't trigger massive insulin spikes. Whole unprocessed foods like vegetables, leafy greens, nuts, seeds, fish, meat, and legumes. These foods nourish the body without overstimulating insulin. On the other hand, refined carbs, sugary snacks, and processed foods send insulin soaring, locking the body into fat storage mode. You could eat fewer calories of those foods, but if insulin remains high, your thermostat is still set too high. The key is quality over quantity. By shifting food choices toward insulin-friendly options, you start dialing the thermostat down. The second principle is to reduce meal frequency. It's not just what you eat, but how often you eat it. Every eating event raises insulin, even a small snack. When you eat constantly, 6, 8, 10 times a day, Insulin never has the chance to fall, and your body never gets the signal to burn stored fat. By eating fewer, more structured meals, you allow insulin to drop between eating occasions. This creates natural periods where the body can access its fat reserves. For many people, that might mean 3 meals a day without snacks. For others, it may mean experimenting with intermittent fasting, condensing eating into a smaller window, such as 2 meals a day. The goal isn't deprivation. The goal is rhythm, times of feeding and times of fasting, both of which the body is designed for. The third principle is to avoid constant grazing. Our modern environment is built for snacking, coffee with sugar in the morning, a granola bar mid-morning, chips in the afternoon, dessert after dinner, and maybe even something late at night. Each one of these raises insulin just enough to keep it chronically high. Breaking this pattern is one of the simplest but most powerful steps you can take. By spacing meals and cutting out the constant snacking, you're allowing insulin to return to baseline. That small change alone can start resetting your set weight over time. When you put these 3 steps together, insulin lowering foods, fewer meals, and no grazing, you're aligning with the body's natural system of homeostasis. Instead of fighting biology with calorie restriction, you're working with biology by targeting the real driver, insulin. That's why this approach succeeds where who less, move more fails. The calorie model assumes that people regain weight because they lack willpower. But as we've seen, the body defends its set weight fiercely. Calorie restriction without lowering insulin just makes the body fight back harder, slowing metabolism, increasing hunger, and driving cravings. It's not a failure of discipline. It's the predictable response of a survival system trying to maintain balance. When you reframe obesity as a hormonal imbalance instead of a willpower problem, everything changes. You realize it's not about starving yourself, punishing yourself in the gym, or counting every calorie for the rest of your life. It's about restoring the proper signals that tell your body how much fat to store, and that signal is insulin. Lower insulin and the thermostat resets. Lower insulin and the body naturally begins to defend a healthier weight. This is not just theory, it's empowering. It means lasting weight loss is possible for anyone, not by fighting against your body, but by understanding it. By choosing the right foods, eating at the right times, and giving your body breaks from constant insulin stimulation, you can take control of your set weight. This is the sustainable way forward. It's not about short-term dieting. It's about resetting the thermostat and letting your biology work for you, not against you.